Darkness. Silence. Then, a gasp. Myra's eyes snapped open, and she choked on the frigid air. Pain shot through her limbs like needles of ice, and her breath came out in ragged clouds of vapor. She wasn't dead. Not yet. But she would be soon if she didn't find shelter. The crash had been worse than she'd imagined. Her ship, Aurora, was nothing more than a twisted wreck of metal and debris, half buried in the snow. Sparks flickered from torn wiring, the last remnants of power fading fast. Her gloved fingers trembled as she activated her wrist scanner. Environment scan, critical. External temperature, -48 degrees Celsius. Hypothermia imminent. Myra gritted her teeth. No kidding. She forced herself to move, pushing against the biting wind that howled through the icy wasteland. The planet, designation VX-17, hadn't been her intended stop. The emergency landing had been her only choice when an asteroid storm tore through her ship's hull. Now, she was alone on a frozen world, with no sign of life, no supplies, and no way off. Unless she found shelter, she wouldn't last the night. Her boots crunched through knee-deep snow as she scanned the landscape. Jagged cliffs loomed in the distance, their dark shapes barely visible through the blizzard. If there were caves, they'd be there. She moved forward, each step an exhausting effort against the relentless cold. Her body was already shutting down, her fingers numb even inside the insulated gloves. She had minutes, maybe an hour, before frostbite took hold. Then she saw it. A light. Faint, pulsing, unmistakably artificial. Hope surged through her veins, burning away the numbness. Someone was out there. Scene 2, the encounter. Myra stumbled toward the light, half running, half falling. As she got closer, she realized it wasn't just a beacon, it was an entrance. A large metal door was embedded in the rocky cliffside, partially covered in ice. She slammed her hand against it, breathless. Hello? Anyone in there? Silence. She pounded again, harder. Please. I'm freezing out here. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from the other side. Myra's blood turned to ice. That didn't sound human. Before she could react, the door hissed and slid open. A wave of warmth hit her like a shock, and she all but collapsed inside, gasping as the heat wrapped around her frozen limbs. The door slammed shut behind her. She forced herself upright, blinking against the dim red lighting. The walls were lined with unfamiliar technology, sleek and alien in design. Weapons. Armor. Strange symbols glowing along the edges of the room. And then she saw him. A towering figure stood in the center of the chamber, clad in dark, heavy armor. His skin was a deep, midnight blue, his eyes a piercing silver that glowed faintly in the dim light. A warrior, massive, imposing, and radiating raw power. He took a slow step forward, and his voice rumbled through the air like distant thunder. You are human. Myra swallowed hard, her frozen breath still uneven. Yeah. And you're not. His silver eyes studied her, sharp and calculating. Then he spoke again, his tone colder than the planet outside. This world is not for you. Myra forced a weak chuckle. No kidding. Look, I don't know who you are, but I need shelter. Just for the night. The alien warrior's expression didn't change. Why should I let you live? She met his gaze, defiant despite the fear curling in her gut. Because if you don't, you'll have a human corpse on your floor in a few hours. A long silence stretched between them. Then, with a slow exhale, he turned and moved toward a control panel. You may stay. Relief flooded her. Thank you. He cut her off with a sharp glance. But you will not survive the night. Myra frowned. What do you mean? It's warm in here. Your body is already shutting down. His voice was blunt, factual. You have lost too much heat. The air here will not be enough. She shivered involuntarily, her body still aching from the cold. Then, what do you suggest? His gaze was unreadable as he stepped closer, his towering form casting a long shadow over her. There is only one way for you to live. Myra's pulse quickened. And that is. The alien warrior's voice was low, firm, and absolute. Share my bed. Or freeze. Myra's breath hitched. Excuse me, she managed, her voice unsteady. The alien warrior didn't blink. His silver eyes remained locked onto hers, unreadable yet unwavering. Your body is failing. Hypothermia has already set in. The only way to restore your core temperature is sustained body heat. She swallowed hard, the reality of her situation crashing down. He wasn't making some kind of crude offer, he was stating a fact. The warmth of the room wasn't enough. She was still freezing, her body still too weak. And unless she found a source of warmth fast, she'd die before morning. Myra let out a shaky breath. You mean, literal body heat? The alien gave a single nod. We share heat, or you perish. It wasn't a choice. Not really. Survival always won. Myra clenched her jaw, ignoring the prickling discomfort of the situation. Fine. But don't get any ideas. The alien huffed, something like amusement flashing in his eyes. I do not desire weak, dying creatures. Well, that was blunt. Without another word, he turned and moved toward the far side of the chamber. A thick fur-lined sleeping mat was spread out against the wall, large enough to accommodate someone of his massive size. He lay down, motioning for her to follow. Myra hesitated only a moment before swallowing her pride and stepping forward. The moment she sank onto the mat beside him, warmth engulfed her like a shockwave. His body radiated heat, unnatural, almost furnace-like. She stiffened as he pulled her close with one powerful arm, pressing her against his broad chest. The heat was overwhelming, spreading through her frozen limbs with startling intensity. Her body shuddered involuntarily, but she didn't pull away. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Slowly, painfully, sensation returned to her fingers and toes. The deep ache in her bones faded. Her shivering ceased. Myra let out a soft breath, exhausted but alive. I think it's working. The warrior didn't respond right away. His breathing was steady, his body still radiating warmth against hers. Then, finally, he spoke, his voice quieter than before. You are stronger than most. She blinked, surprised. Most humans. Most beings, he corrected. Myra let out a dry chuckle. I'll take that as a compliment. A brief silence. Then, why were you here? He asked, his voice curious but still guarded. Myra hesitated, remembering the chaos of her crash. I wasn't supposed to be. I was just passing through when an asteroid storm tore my ship apart. Emergency landing was my only choice. The alien considered this for a moment. You are stranded, then? She exhaled, her breath warm against his chest. Yeah. A pause. Then, I have a ship. Myra stiffened. You do. The warrior's silver eyes met hers in the dim light. You would not survive out there alone. If I leave, you come with me. Her heart pounded. Away off this frozen hell. A chance to live. She stared at him, uncertainty and gratitude warring in her chest. Why would you help me? He didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, he murmured, because you fought to live. That is rare. Myra swallowed past the lump in her throat. For the first time since she crashed, hope flickered in her chest like a dying ember reigniting. She was going to survive. And she wasn't going to do it alone.